Welcome to Behind the Mask in Conversation with. Behind the Mask is a neurodivergent focused podcast that aims to offer support, knowledge, understanding, and most importantly, exposure to the neurodivergent community. If you are here, firstly, I hope you enjoy the episode. And lastly, if you are enjoying it, please like, follow, share, and subscribe because your support with this podcast can really help us push the message out. Keep being amazing all, and thank you.
Perfect.
So for those of you just joining, this is Behind the Mask, the neurodivergent online podcast made by neurodivergent people for neurodivergent people. The whole idea and context of this is to share knowledge, experience, tips, hints, and everything neurodivergent in a bid to raise awareness, visibility, and support for everybody around. So this is season 2, episode 4, and I am joined by a guest from over the pond in the USA. I'm joined by Creator B. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm buzzing. I'm like, yeah, we're going international.
Yeah,
You are officially the first proper American on. So we had a token gesture. So there's a local girl to me called Millie Hart who lives in America, who's a creator. So she moved there and got married. So she did the podcast from America, but you're the first citizen to join us on.
Yeah,
so I'm thrilled to have you.
Wow. I'm excited to be the first.
Yeah. So for everyone listening and watching, tell us about you. So who is B?
Hello, I'm B. I am 26, almost 27 years old. I'm from the East Coast. I'm an ADHDer, a late diagnosed ADHDer. I've got way too many cats. We have 5 cats. I've got 1 hamster. And I'm just a very passionate person when it comes to neurodivergence and mental health. And that's kind of what's driven me to share my experiences and to start creating content in the first place.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. So you mentioned earlier being late diagnosed. So what is your story then? So how old were you when you got diagnosed?
Yeah, I actually got diagnosed last year. Yes, time is a strange concept, but yes. April of last year, I got formally diagnosed. But prior to that, I started to sort of suspect around like college. I feel like that's probably something a lot of people can relate to because beyond that, like school was just sort of very structured and life was very structured. But then I got to college and it was just sort of like, okay, now you have to actually be able to form connections with people. And I'm seeing that like I'm not doing the same things that everybody else is doing. And I was real lonely. I was real depressed. So it just kind of spiraled this whole like kind of questioning of like, what is it? Like, what is it about me? I thought I was a starseed from another planet. Still, the jury is still out on that one.
Why not? Why not?
Right? Like, it makes sense. I thought that I was bipolar. I thought I had BPD. And actually, in high school, I was certain that I had ADHD, which is really funny. I brought it up to my doctor, and she talked to my dad, and they're like, "No, you're fine." And I was like, "Okay, I'll never talk to another professional about that ever again." And I didn't think about it again until I started therapy again when I was like 22. And my therapist mentioned how ADHD can sometimes present as anxiety in girls. And that's like when it really started to click for me. I was like, okay, you're saying it for a reason. We didn't really talk about it again, but like it was just sort of in my mind. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. But then with autism, it was like, I don't know, because like, the representation that we see and the criteria, it just never made sense. Come to find out, I was just taking it too literally, which is the autism.
The irony there. This is the
Right.
journey I went. So I had no idea I had autism. So I had no idea I had ADHD. I got diagnosed April the 6th last year. So I was April last year too. So I was like, yeah,
Nice.
and me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was the GP that went, yeah, you've scored really high on the autism one as well. I was like, no, I haven't.
What?
Let's just do ADHD. And then
Right.
I made friends on here, and bit by bit there was going, do you think maybe? And I'm just like, stop it, no. But here we are. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of how like that's what really drove me to suspect it is like March 2020, COVID's happening, everybody's doing their self-discovery on TikTok, and I'm seeing things that I can relate a little bit too much to. So I was like, well, let me do my own research. And a Word document later, I was convinced. And then I got my formal diagnosis in April of last year. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey. It's a lot.
So with that then, um, what age are we talking college? Is college 18 in America?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
So
18.
I'm just thinking like Saved by the Bell, like one of my favorite programs. I'm thinking, how old were they on Saved by the Bell? 'Cause that was the American school system, wasn't it? When it was fairly. You may be too young for Saved by the Bell, but it was the one back
See,
in the day.
I didn't watch it, but I do know of it.
So in relation to that transition then, so how did you find growing up as a young person? You mentioned that you hit that kind of change when you were 18, and we can go into that in a bit. And I think the stabilizers sort of come off life, don't they, as you kind of take that step. But what was it
Yeah.
like as a young child for you in education and school and things like that?
Yeah. Um, I was definitely I was a good kid overall. I definitely was kind of like strange. My cousin tells me that apparently I hated everybody as a child, and to her it seemed like I, as a toddler, would survey like all the adults to discover like who's the smartest and who's not gonna kill me. And so I'm like that's just sort of
Yeah,
how I've always
trying
been.
to
I feel like
find that safe space just to take
yeah.
refuge.
Yeah, and I feel like I was very intuitive as a kid. Like thinking back, there were certain family members who like I didn't mess with and I didn't want to like be held by. And then growing up and learning that those were not good people, I'm like, yeah. So no wonder at 3 I didn't want you to touch me because I knew. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, and then like in school, I was definitely a pleasure to have in class, but wish that she would participate more because I just wouldn't. And like, it wasn't that I didn't want to like talk at school, but I didn't like speaking in class. Um, and like in high school, I would always get the lowest participation grade if we had to do like an English class discussion, and they'd be like, "Oh, you have to participate at least one time. Everybody else is going around multiple times. I have one thing to say, and that's all you're getting out of me." And that's all they would ever get.
And did you find as well? Did you find yourself blurting that one thing out? Because if ever anybody else said it and took yours away, you're like, I've got
Yeah,
nowhere
I
else
know
to
I've
go
got
here.
nothing else. No, for real, especially in like English class, because I started to realize that I would have a lot of trouble like reading into like the deeper meanings of books, and everybody else is like, oh, like I think this is what they mean, and I'm struggling. So if I thought of something, I would have to say it right away because I'm like, somebody else is gonna say it because this is obviously I'm not like getting to the meat of it. Like this is surface level.
Yeah, but it is, isn't it? And I think that's something I can relate to, that literal take on things. But I genuinely just thought everybody else was stupid. Like
Same.
like not that like I was the stupid one. I clearly know I was just ADHD undiagnosed. But I'd
Yeah.
literally just look at people and I'd just be like, "How are you seeing anything different than this? It literally just says this. Why are you going? Oh, just imagine, just imagine. No, no, just read. That's what it
Right.
says.
Like the author meant what they said. I don't know what
Yeah,
else to tell you.
yeah. Why are you writing a story when it's already been written? Just read it. Just read
Exactly.
it.
No, for real.
And
Yeah.
what was schooling like then? So if you kind of had these differences and these kind of barriers to learning, let's say, was it something that was picked up in school and supported in relation to those kind of barriers to learning, or things you learned differently to other people? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. In like I would say elementary school, they may have like slightly picked up on it because I always had like a really high reading level. Like I was always reading at like a 12th grade level since like third grade. And so I remember like fourth and fifth grade, I had like different spelling classes than everybody else in my grade. And then I would go to like a different room for math classes than everybody else. So I guess that was them trying to be like, oh, well,
Hmm.
we're seeing something here. Like, But beyond that, not really. When I transitioned from elementary school to middle school, I would say that that was probably the most supported that I ever was in school, just because I switched from or public school to private school, and they were like way ahead of where I finished in the fifth grade. So
Okay.
I was, yeah, so it was a really rocky start to like sixth grade. But because it was a private school and it was so small, it was like a very like not like one to one, but it was a lot easier for teachers to,
Yeah.
pick up on like who was struggling and, give them that extra help. So,
It's just bridging the gap, is it? And again, in a weird way, I bet that probably hid a lot of it, your neurodivergence as well, because of
yeah,
the learning style in a smaller school. And actually, they just would have assumed that, you've come from public to private, you're going to be behind progress. So we'll
yeah.
just do our job and bring you up to speed.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and I feel like it definitely did because, I was always a good student. My bare minimum was always enough, but I just needed to get up to the baseline to know what the bare minimum I needed to get was. And once
Mm.
I got that, I was getting B's and A's. But I had a teacher in seventh grade, and he was like the most strict teacher. He used to carry around a wiffle ball bat, and everybody was scared of him. And he was like, "You cannot, procrastinate in my class. You can't write a paper in the night." And I was like, "Watch me," and I did, and I got a B. So I was like, my bare
Yeah,
minimum
the
has just
one
always been
thing
enough.
never to do to a neurodivergent is tell them they can't do something, because it's like, oh, I'll show
Exactly.
you. And I will do it better
Exactly.
than anybody else around.
And you won't even know. Like you won't
Mm,
even have any idea because it looks just like all my other bare minimum work because that's all I did.
yeah, I will do enough to get me by. You mentioned something earlier which led a question to me. So when you first made suggestion that you thought you may have ADHD and you got
Hmm.
that rejection, like it sounds all like RSD to me. Like you just thought, you know what, I've got rejection. That's the last
Yeah.
chance then. How
Hmm.
did you come back from that? Because that must have been so difficult to have put a vulnerability forward and
Hmm.
for it just
Yeah.
to be shut down.
It really was. And that is something that like I feel like I still struggle with just in general because I feel like a lot of us end up getting invalidated when we talk to doctors because they're like, well, you don't fit whatever bias I have, so you
Hmm.
couldn't possibly, have ADHD. But I think that, all of the subtle research that I kind of did over the years on my own and all of like the introspection and reflection that I did and question asking, and then finally finding a doctor who like when I actually did have the courage to finally bring it up because it was finally starting to like really affect me as an adult. Like I was trying to get through my doula course and I was like, I literally cannot focus. Like I need help. So I finally worked up the courage, and she was a cool doctor. So I feel like I had already had that, relationship with her where I felt like if I said something, she wasn't just gonna be like, "Shut up, like you're fine." That definitely that really helped to build the courage up. Um, and it's still something I struggle with because then I went to see a psychiatrist, and he thought that I was narcoleptic instead of ADHD. So
What, because of your crashes and your exhaustion and stuff?
yeah, he was like, "Oh, well, you're up and down, so you obviously have a mood disorder, and then like you have trouble with sleep." And my sleep study came back normal, so he's like, "Well, you're probably just like narcoleptic." So he gave me Ritalin, he gave me a stimulant because he was like, "Well, that's what they prescribe for narcolepsy." And I was like, "Well, I mean, it did help, but like I'm not narcoleptic. It helped because I have ADHD."
Yeah. And how bad, like, there's a term here that's used a lot at the minute called medical gaslighting. I don't know whether
Hmm.
that's like universal thing. And it is, there's so many, like you mentioned BPD, so many people that I speak to have had GPs and practitioners take them down the route of BPD or bipolar before even entertaining the possibility of neurodivergence.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind because surely having a neurodiversity or neurodivergence would be a first step before you explore further, and it just seems so
Yeah.
lost. And I think that the stigma here was naughty little boy syndrome, and the
Hmm.
image of ADHD quite
Yeah.
often portrayed was that naughty little white boy smashing things up at school, put in the unit. The image of autism was that almost geeky little girl with pigtails, braces, sitting in a corner. And you kind
Yeah.
of build these false images of what it looks like. So then when you compare yourself to that, you go, well, that's not me, so I can't possibly be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It,
Well, and that's why I didn't suspect autism for the longest time because I have a cousin who is autistic, but I think she has, other intellectual disabilities as well. But like growing up, it was like, I just knew that as autism. And so it was always like, well, nobody's gonna think that I'm autistic because I don't act the way that she acts. So I can't
mm.
possibly be. And now I'm like, well, you know what? The fact that we could relate to each other so much, that should have been my sign.
Yeah, and I think like gradually, like as I've took a step back, I've realized the people in life that have been really close to me are also likely neurodivergent, and that it's almost
Hmm.
like I've got my people, and
Yeah.
indirectly found those people and kept them close. And like when you mentioned that safe space earlier or that safe person, I
Hmm.
think it's common
Yeah.
that we find those people that we just go, okay, I feel home, I can unmask here.
Yeah. Definitely.
So like if we take things across to America and things like that, so the perception in England and the UK would be that America is further forward in maybe accepting neurodiversity. And again, I may be wrong here. That's why I use the term
Yeah.
perception. That they are further along, maybe more people are accessing medication and more young people in school are accessing medication and getting supported with it. Would
Hmm.
that be a true reflection, or is that very different to what you experience?
Um, I would say it's different than my personal experience. I do know that, there are people out there who are able to access the support that is available. But I will say that the barriers are like definitely a lot higher than the ease of access. Just, because of insurance. Some people don't even qualify for insurance. They can't afford it. So then, they can't get any type of support, even like the state insurance. Some people just don't qualify because they make too much, but they don't make enough to pay for regular
So
insurance.
this kind of lost quota of people who are not quite rich enough, but you're not poor enough to get it free. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
we have similar here in some cases where like the people who are more well-to-do can pay privately, but actually if you're not able to, you just have to go into this big pool and wait.
Yeah.
And like the wait times in the UK are anything between 5 and I've heard 9 years recently. It's crazy.
Like, what are you supposed to do?
Mm,
And I feel like that's where a lot of neurodivergent adults that at least I've been seeing are, because I feel like a lot of us, are late diagnosed. So now we're burned out and, we're like, we don't know what to do. A lot of us are struggling to work and trying to access, like our disability pay is a nightmare. Like I've started going through the process and I swear it sent me through all 5 stages of grief just because of how much it's highlighted my struggles because it's just not a disability friendly process at all.
it's that
Um,
constant cycle of having to justify your experience to somebody
yeah,
quite often that doesn't understand it. Like
exactly.
trying to tell a neurotypical how your lived experience, it just leads to people going, oh, we all have a little bit of that. And I'm like,
Exactly.
oh, please
And then yeah,
stop.
and then you're at their mercy of like whatever your bias is. Like if
Mm,
you think it's bad enough because of how I described it, how I'm able to describe it because I do have a communication disorder. Like I struggle with communication. So yeah, that's kind of also a barrier to be able to actually
yeah.
articulate those things. But yeah, like in general, I feel like the support could be better. It could be more accessible to more people.
And how about social acceptance of neurodivergence and neurodiversity? Is it seen as something that is very much just part of society and kind of accepted, or is there pushback against it from I suppose neurotypicals and generalized society in general?
Yeah. Um, I would say that it's kind of it's kind of split. I feel like because of the fact that it's been such a big conversation in the past few years, I think that we are definitely getting to a place of better understanding. But I think that in general, because especially being, somebody like myself, I'm high masking with, low to moderate support needs. Especially when it comes to people with higher support needs, I feel like we still struggle with, that type of acceptance and,
Hmm.
accepting people of any other disabilities that just don't make sense or that they can't, hide
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
disturbing the world. So yeah, I feel like we are definitely, well, I don't even know if I can say we're moving in the right direction. I feel like at least we are having the conversation more, which is important. But I would say overall it's iffy.
It is, and I think for me, like I mentioned to you, why I was so pleased that you were coming in. Not only are you a great creator, like I am somebody that truly believes in representation,
Mhm.
and like to have you, an American, a woman underrepresented, a black woman, or a woman of color, all those things that I don't see enough of, because ultimately neurodiversity is a human thing. It's not a race thing. It's not a culture thing.
Mhm.
It is a
Yeah.
human neuro condition. Um, and how does that lie in relation to your background, your culture, and things like that? Is there a pushback? Is there a difference? Is it seen differently?
Um, I think in general, when it comes to like Black culture, it's like a general consensus that we don't really talk about mental health, like just in general. Just
Hmm.
like my cousin who is autistic, like that was never like a big conversation. It was always just like something kind of hush hush. Like I don't even know like how I knew that as a child. I don't remember anybody ever telling me. It was just like, oh, okay, like, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we definitely didn't talk about anything, and that's kind of a thing in the Black community. Um, it's definitely changing, as everybody is, breaking generational curses and recognizing that, like, hey, we actually do need to talk about these things because they are affecting us a lot. And, we're
Hmm.
just sweeping things under the rug. The amount of anxiety I had as a child was not normal, but like, just, put it under the rug,
Well,
like, it's
like
fine.
I can't even begin to. I can empathize, but I can't even begin to imagine like you were trying to figure out lane after lane after lane after lane all at the same
Hmm.
time, some of which you weren't even aware of. So that must have been
Yeah.
batshit for you. Like,
Real. Wow. And I don't even know. Like the anxiety I feel now as an adult, I'm like, did I feel that as a child? Like, is this how it felt? Because I can't remember. But like, if it is, can I get a time machine so I can go back and give myself a hug? Because
mm.
what? It's bonkers.
And it's naming it as well. Like I often kind of reflect and look back and stuff, and like I'm terrible at naming emotions and acknowledging emotions now, but what I'm
Yeah.
better at is acknowledging impact and feeling. So I might not be able to name the emotion, but I'll recognize a pattern, which will then
Hmm.
enable me to kind of go, okay, here's what I can apply. I look back to when I
Yeah.
was a kid, and I must have had no clue what the hell was going on at all, and just like I'm glad I can't remember. Like
Yeah. No, same.
strangely, I can remember traumatic times and I can remember key
Of course.
moments.
Yeah.
Like they stick with me, and I'm like, I wish I could let go of those. But like the other times, like I just draw blanks on it, and I'm glad because it must have just been shit. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think back to when I transitioned from kindergarten to first grade. I went from a school that was just a kindergarten to a big elementary school. And I had trouble asking to go to the bathroom, so I would just have accidents. And my mom's like, "You were just too scared to ask the teacher to go to the bathroom." I was like, "You didn't think that that was weird?" Like, I must have been terrified. Animals wet themselves when they're scared. Like,
yeah,
I, your
like
child was
can we
absolutely
just acknowledge the
petrified.
behavior here? This isn't typical behavior. Like, look at the
Right.
problem.
Like it
But
could have been so many things.
so much involved in it, though, isn't it? Not only having to talk and address a situation as a child, but then
Hmm.
potentially you've got to go somewhere. Maybe you're not sure where it is, and then you've got to walk
Yeah,
there on your own, and you don't know
exactly.
who you're going to see, what you're going to see, where you're going to wear. Like
And what if
and
I get lost? Like I'm
yeah,
scared. Like what is this place? Scared
and
of the
what
school?
would be considered to be a simple thing. For me, I was very high masculine, and I was in a quite a small school, so I didn't face that. But I know of other people who I spoke to who had that, and I actually had a student at the college who was 16, and they literally made themselves bad because they wouldn't ask to leave the classroom. And it was when you realise they were neurodivergent, you go, ah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. But at the time, I was just like, my literal mind was just ask, because it hadn't been something that had impacted me. But the more I learn, I'm like, ah,
Yeah, I know.
really,
I
like,
think that too. Because like now as an adult, like I still have that same anxiety around like asking to use the bathroom for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it was trauma. Maybe that
yeah.
was just traumatizing. But like I still have that same anxiety. So it's kind of like, I
I think
was terrified as a kid.
I
I
think
couldn't just like,
we develop the ability to kind of objectively rationalize. I think as we get older, based on experience and what we've learned, you
yeah,
kind of go, I may not feel this, but let's take a step back and objectively look at this situation rather than
yeah,
actually going by the gut
yeah,
and things like that.
yeah, exactly.
So, in relation to yourself, then, what would you say some of the main impacts on yourself the undiagnosed ADHD had for you prior to diagnosis?
Yeah. I would say that the biggest, I guess it's not really like a symptom, but the biggest like thing has been burnout. Hitting that was not a fun experience. And it because it's just sort of kind of knocked everything out of whack. Like the fact that I already had trouble focusing because of my ADHD is now exacerbated by the fact that I can't think straight because my brain is always overwhelmed because I didn't burn out. Um, my favorite is ADHD's need for novelty and like spontaneity, but like the fact that I can't do that because my autism is like, well, we kind of have to do the same thing every day. Otherwise, like, what's going on? Does today
Yeah.
even exist?
And I think that's why it's great having another ADHD on there. Like for transparency for myself. So I'm diagnosed ADHD. I've had 3 of the assessments for my autism, and I've got the final one which I'm awaiting. So I'm kind of
Mhm.
everything's pointing that way with the autism, but the
Yeah.
ADHD is diagnosed. So with that, I've kind of been exploring ADHD, and my God, it makes so much sense to the feelings I've had. Like my head is just jumping out, going, "Woo, let's go!" and inside going, "No, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank
No,
you."
for real.
And it's just such. And you said that conflict between the ADHD and the autistic, it's crazy, isn't it?
It
And
is, and it's frustrating.
and how do you manage? Are you medicated at the moment?
I am currently on a medication journey to find what works. I
Okay,
was last year, I had a combination that worked, but then I stopped that and then I tried it again and it was not the move somehow for some reason, but basically
like,
flying by the seat of my pants now.
did you find, or have you found that medicating ADHD heightened the autism?
Yes, absolutely. It was like when I took the Ritalin, I was like, why do I feel more autistic? And I don't know really what that even means, but like it just feels like the autistic traits are they're just stronger because I feel like they are like fighting. It's like they're pushing against each other and they have equal strength. But like if you weaken the ADHD, then the autism is like, okay, like I can take over, That's clearly what you want to happen
Hmm.
right now.
It is, and in some angles, like I understand why people question bipolar and BPD,
Mhm.
because there is such a contrast and conflict between sometimes what the masked you puts forward to what you describe your experience and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, so do you think are there some positives that you take from being ADHD? So are there things that
Yeah.
you see as strengths? Because I think we talk about the barriers and the impacts, and I think it's important because if somebody can connect and go, oh my god, I feel seen, but
Hmm.
actually like there are positives to it. What's your positive experiences of being ADHD?
Yeah, I definitely feel like there are, quite a lot of positives. And like I wouldn't ever, change myself because I feel like it is because of who I am. Um, but I feel like one of the big positives is just like how passionate I am about the things that I care about. I feel like that's really important and it's a lost art in this world, I feel like.
Yeah,
Um,
authenticity towards things, just
yeah.
genuine. Yeah, love that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like if I like something, like I actually like it, and it's not just because, like people said, this is cool and I like it. Like I can't just do that. So I feel like that's also a positive to kind of, have that, even if it is annoying sometimes.
Yeah.
That adherence to like, no, I only like what I like and not because other people told me to like it.
Yeah, I've had people say to me that like I in some ways I could appear narcissistic because I can be controlling.
Mm,
And before I knew, like I'd had someone say that's a bit narcissistic behavior. And I look and I go, no, no, no. Like I look at it now, and actually it was just me boundary setting. I was just
mm,
making clear what my boundaries and where I was comfortable, and actually other people weren't dealing with that so well. But I didn't know
mm.
what it was, so I couldn't articulate it. I couldn't try and explain it to somebody. But I just found myself in that place where I was just like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to do this, and I'm not going to. Or
Yeah.
like, there's no movement here. Um,
Mhm.
so what led to you then kind of becoming this creator and having that passion to go out there? And you mentioned earlier, it's not just the neurodivergence that you talk about. You're very much an advocate for well-being, welfare, mental health, and all these things. What led you
Mhm.
on that journey to kind of take it? Because you're not just on TikTok, you do other platforms as well, don't you? Think you got, is it a YouTube channel you have as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so YouTube is like my original platform. I've been making YouTube videos since I was 13, and it was just kind of always something that I liked. But I never really know like what niche that I wanted to be in. So, it was kind of like a journey my whole life of trying to decide what niche I should be in, what should I do, like what do I care about? And I want to say it was probably like, I mean, at the start of the pandemic was when I started to do more like lifestyle content and more like vlogs because I was like, I feel like I have a perspective that I want to share with the world. I feel like, my perspective is pretty relatable. I feel like I'm a pretty down to earth, open-minded person, and I don't know, I like to watch content from people who are like me. So I personally was like,
Mm,
there's somebody out there who would want to watch content from somebody like me. So when I started, my journey of discovering my neurodivergence, it was kind of, you know, uh, it just was natural to just be like, well, let me share this with, my YouTube channel. And I think my first video that had anything to do with ADHD was in 2022, like the beginning of 2022. And it was just like me talking about all of the reasons why I thought that I had ADHD. um, and from there it's just, I don't know, it's just felt natural to me to just be like, because I feel passionate about mental health and about the way that other people feel and the way that I feel and it being valid. um, and I just want to share that with people. I want, other people to not feel alone, because I knew that feeling of like, as I'm getting older, not knowing what's wrong with me, and trying to figure it all out. And I'm like, if I had more people to watch, I feel like it would have been an easier journey, and I wanted to be that for other people. I kind of wanted to be a safe space
mm.
online.
And I think it's a weird thing that happens um, when you find out about your neurodivergent. You, being neurodivergent, you kind of like, certainly with me, I felt like, and I still feel it now, 18 months on, I want to do whatever I can to stop another person experiencing and getting to the point that I had to get to find out.
Hmm.
And also, like, I look at older people and think, well, if I was where I was at 34, there are people 20 years on me. How must they be feeling not knowing this? So it's like, we
Yeah.
need easy to let we need to let people know that they're not just crazy head cases, they're not just
Yeah.
depressed, they've not just got this or that, they've not got high functioning anxiety, all these
Hmm.
labels that we kind of get, or I certainly got throughout life, when actually all I needed was four letters, which was
Yeah.
ADHD. Like, there was so much context there with it.
Yeah. No, definitely. I agree.
um and with that, obviously, you have a lot of confidence online, or certainly that's what comes across when it
Hmm.
comes to social circles and friendship groups and things like that. What's that looked like for you over the years, and what's that like now? Are you somebody that is quite sociable and has groups of large groups of friends? Are you quite a small group type of person?
I've always been a small group type of person. Like, this is something that I've been thinking about for a while because somebody had mentioned it on Reddit before, and I was like, you know what? It is kind of interesting. I have always been like in a trio friend group. It's never been like four friends that are like close. It's always me and then two other like closer friends. And that's just been since elementary school.
Like Three
Um,
Musketeers style?
yeah, exactly. And like even when I was in middle school and like one of our like trio friends left, like somebody else just rolled right in and just completed the trio. And I'm like, I don't really know what that is, but like it's always been a trio. And I feel like maybe it's because I really can only manage like two or three people at a time. Because even now, I really only have like three close friends. And like, I don't even talk to them every day. I only talk to one of them every day. And then like the other ones, we hang out when we hang out and then it's chill. Um, but as far as like building relationships, that's something that's always been tricky. And I honestly don't like the friends that I have are just kind of by chance. It's like, oh, we happen to meet and get along really well, and we've been friends this long, and we're just not gonna ever not be friends anymore because at this point, I don't really know
Do you find
what
when,
else to
when
do.
you find one of your people, you just grab them, you're like, yeah, okay, you can stay?
Yep, you can stay, and you have to stay. We
Yeah,
get along too well, and like you're close enough to me where we can hang out, and it's not weird. So yeah.
yeah, no, I get that totally. And so I'm skipping back a bit here. Typical ADHD. I've kind of gone, but it
No,
will
it's
all
okay.
come
It's keeping me
together.
engaged.
Yeah. So when we spoke about earlier about your diagnosis and things like that, what
Mhm.
does that diagnosis process look like in America?
Mhm.
Like, what does
So,
that entail?
yeah, I feel like the diagnosis process over here, I don't really know that much about how it is in other places, but I feel like it's kind of all over the place because there are like different avenues that you can go down. Um, I personally went the specific autism ADHD eval route, which is different than like the full neuropsych eval that a lot of people end up getting, which is way more expensive. I didn't have the money for all that, though I would love for them to read me to filth. To not have the money for that.
Dean, I'm here for
Um,
that. I want the brain scan and everything. I do.
yeah, no, for real, the whole body. Like, just tell me everything that's wrong so we can fix it.
Read me to filth. I'm here for that statement. I love it.
Yeah, so I had just like the regular schmegular autism ADHD eval. It was honestly like a really easy process the way that I went about it. Because I was able to just like make an appointment online, which seemed like too good to be true to me. I was like, is this place legit? Like, are they gonna like just tell me
Yeah,
I'm
going down
autistic
some
and like,
dodgy alleyway and just knocking at that
yes,
door. Like, can I come in?
for real. And it's like, I mean, it's affordable, so like I might as well. But it went really well. It was one appointment and it was 2.5 hours. And it was a clinical interview where we, talked about like what was going on and like my childhood and my adult life. And then we did some of like the questionnaires. And there were a couple that like I had to do on my own while she just kind of like sat there on the other side of the camera, available for any questions. And then we came back and then we did some more that she was going through and asking me the questions. And then at the end of that, she came back and she kind of explained both autism and ADHD to me, and she went over all of my scores. Um, and it was honestly, it was a good experience, especially, being invalidated by doctors before in the past. After bringing up autism, it was nice to have a psychiatrist like just listen to me and be like,
Mm.
oh, like, yeah, that does sound like autism.
Yeah, no, and was it a? Oh, I think the mic's gone funny. Is anyone else getting funny on the mic? No, I think it's gone fine. So did they diagnose ADHD and autism at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah, so I went in for the combo. The place that I went to, they have like different, you can just go for ADHD or you could just go for autism. But then you have to pay for it twice. And I was like, I don't really care about knowing if I have ADHD, honestly. Like I'm pretty convinced, but like I really want to know if I have autism. But I was like, there's gonna be a day where I'm gonna want to confirm if I have ADHD. So
Hmm.
let's just go for both of them at the same
Hit
time.
two
And
birds, one stone. That would be the dream
exactly.
here, because
Right.
to my understanding is you have to go through. Like I've had to go through two separate ones. I've had to get diagnosed
Hmm.
twice with ADHD because they wouldn't
Mm.
accept a private diagnosis. So I paid private. They wouldn't accept it for medication,
Oh
so
God.
I've had to get re-diagnosed through the
Hmm.
appropriate channels.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and that's frustrating as hell.
I
Um,
bet. My doctor tried to do that to me. She was like, "I might have to reevaluate you for ADHD." And I was like, "Girl, if you don't just give me my Ritalin, please. Like, I have a
yeah,
diagnosis. Stop playing with me."
sign me up and give me them now.
For real. Like, I'm not just searching for drugs. I just want to focus.
Yeah, and I think in reality, like if you're diagnosed, we know that the particular medication that they use for us or the variety of it, it's not going to
Mhm.
impact us
Yeah,
like above and beyond actually leveling things out. Obviously, you have to check heart
exactly.
and blood pressure and stuff, but we're not looking to get high. We're looking
You're
to get even. We're looking to get even here. Like just give me a
exactly.
level, please.
Hey, I'm just trying to function where you are right now.
Uh,
Like,
See, absolutely. So with that diagnosis, then, so you mentioned kind of the struggles and the barriers you had, and I always say, kind of, for me, a diagnosis is the start of something, not necessarily the end goal. Because I think
mhm,
what you start to learn and experience and understand about yourself after diagnosis, that process is invaluable. It's like you couldn't put money on it. Um,
definitely.
but how was that experience for you afterwards? Was it just that you got your diagnosis and moved? Like, I talk a lot of time about the grief cycle attached to it. People look at that
Mhm.
grief. Did you experience that at all after diagnosis?
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely did. And I wasn't expecting to because, I had already made peace with the fact that I was certain that I had autism. But for some reason, getting that like concrete answer, it just sort of like sends you back down the hole because it's like all of the things that before I was like, oh, like that was probably autism. Now it's like that was definitely autism. And it's not like a question in my mind. It's like, if I had just received this as a child, then I would be different now.
Hmm.
So yeah, I definitely went back down that hole. I wasn't expecting to be as like exhausted after the whole process, like as a whole too. I was like, oh, I'll be fine the next day, and then the next day, like I literally am fried. I'm back in burnout, can't get out of bed.
And emotional for me as well. Like, I'm not an overly emotional, but like I'll get emotional at the silliest of things rather than things that I should on paper
Oh
get
yeah.
emotional at. But then when I got diagnosed, I was uncontrollable. I was like a blubbering wreck. I was like, oh, and I'm like, like it was like someone had just turned on the tap and all the pressure had come out, but then
Yeah.
it all the pressure come out, but it just left a void that I had to try and fill again because it was just so, like as you say, like rightfully say, it's like all those years you've told yourself you're crazy, you're hyper this, you're just too sensitive, you're just too
Hmm.
that, all that internal imposter syndrome you've had and the damage you've done to yourself,
Yeah.
it validates that, and it's such a journey because like I don't know about you, but I like went back to when I was a kid, like I proper took that journey back through the years, doing
Hmm.
exactly what you've said, kind of that was this was that now makes sense, this makes sense.
Yeah.
it it's
It's a
crazy.
lot. It is.
Mm.
It's crazy. It's a
And
lot.
I say this to anyone I speak to, like strap in, because I am happy that you're related, you've got your diagnosis, and you deserve that. But strap
Hmm.
in, because
Yeah.
give it a few days, a week or two, you're going on that run, and I'm
Yeah.
here
Well,
for
it's
you if
that
you
that
need it.
delayed processing to be
Mm,
like, you know what? Actually, wait.
yeah. But how has the diagnosis helped shape you and helped kind of helped you to move forward and become the bee that we see today? So how has that helped you kind of find you?
Yeah, I feel like it definitely helped with my confidence, like in my diagnosis. I feel like, especially when it comes to making content, being self-diagnosed, it's just sort of scary to be, I feel like, a content creator who is, self-diagnosed because people are constantly like, ah, like you can't do that. That's wrong, bad. How dare you? There's no way you're autistic. And like I got posted on fake disorder cringe. I feel like if I didn't have my diagnosis, that would have absolutely shattered me. But instead, I was able to clap back and be a little bit of a
Yeah.
bitch because I was like, who are you
Just
talking to?
get
Like,
all sassy with like, told you. Like
exactly.
you were telling me I was wrong and I was right, so that makes me God, and you are just silly, like stupid people.
Exactly. For
Yeah.
real. Oh, and he was. I found his whole Facebook. Like, just dumb.
Get you
Um,
know I did it. It's like it's literally like the green flag to get sassy, isn't it? It's like, yeah, for real.
exactly. Like, you can't say anything to me.
No, I love that. Um, so in relation to any other ADHDers or suspected ADHDers that are watching either on YouTube or listening on the podcast channels when this goes live on there. So what advice would you give to them? So based on your lived experience and your learned experience and things like that. So how can ADHDers best support themselves, and what are the top tips that you would give them?
Yeah. I would say first and foremost, whatever questions that you have in your head, if you're questioning, ask them. That's how I, got to where I am and got my diagnosis by asking questions. It might seem annoying. I don't care. I'll post on Reddit 3 times a day until my questions are answered. But because we have a lot of questions,
Or
you have
until
a need
someone
to know.
validates what you believe the truth. Yeah,
Exactly,
it's like,
exactly.
oh, you've
That's all
answered,
I
but
need.
that's not what I wanted to know. Someone tell
Yeah,
me I'm
for
right, and
real.
then we'll go.
Exactly. You have to try different groups. Just saying. But yeah, like, we have a need to know information. So if you feel like you need to know something about yourself or something's not clicking, you can't make it click, ask Reddit, ask Google, ask Chat GPT. That's usually a pretty good resource to start
Mm,
at. Um, I would also say that, like, if you're questioning your neurodivergence, it's helpful to remember that typically neurotypical people do not spend their free time taking quizzes and wondering if they're neurodivergent. They get their
yeah,
answer, they're like, nah, I'm not. My fiance's like, no, I'm not autistic. And like it was never a question again.
yeah. Like I
So
know you're not autistic because you're not reading about autism. So it just.
exactly, if you like to spend your free time reading about it, that might be an indicator.
Hmm.
Um, and I like just in general, when it comes to existing and supporting yourself, I feel like this is something that I'm still learning, but you have to give yourself grace. Like whether it's the way that you talk to yourself, I fall victim to the I should be able to just do this spiral, and it's nasty, it's brutal, but it's like I can't just do it. So no, I shouldn't just be able to. And just talking to yourself gently, being gentle with yourself is a lot harder to do than just being mean to yourself, I know. Um, and you're allowed to make your life easier for yourself. If there are certain things that you do that you're like, oh, well, other people wouldn't do that, or that's considered wasteful. Like, I like to buy prepackaged snacks because if I buy a whole box of Cheez-Its, they'll just go stale. But like, if I have little individual packaged things, then I can just grab them and eat them, and I'll actually eat them. So if it's between you actually eating, then do the thing that's just going to make your life easier, because
Yeah.
otherwise it's
Make,
just not going
make
to get
make
done.
your own rules as long as the rules are going to add value and do good for you.
Exactly, because society is it's already hard enough out there. The least you can do in your life is, make your life, your home, your world accessible for you.
Hmm. And I think with it's not going to go all RuPaul, but becoming unapologetically yourself.
Yeah,
And I th-
definitely.
and I think it just rings true. And I think it's not necessarily about never apologizing for a mistake or never thinking you make a mistake, because we all do.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
don't ever beat yourself up just for being who you were always meant to be.
Exactly. Exactly. Especially when you have good intentions.
Hmm. Absolutely. Um, so before we go on to the last question, which is one I ask anyone, is there anything else that you wanted to share from your experience, or things you've learned, or like life experiences that you've had, which you think you'd want to share with the listeners?
Um, I feel like just the one thing that I am very passionate about is burnout. And I feel like a lot of people have fallen into burnout, and I feel like we don't talk about it enough, and about the consequences of, repeatedly pushing yourself and, being in this state. I'm losing skills like it's nobody's business. Skill regression, skill loss, like it's
Yeah.
happening. And I feel like I want people to know that that is a possibility. And if you feel like you're getting to a point in your life where you're feeling constantly overwhelmed, you're exhausted, you are having a hard time taking care of yourself, like, please, if you can, like, take a break. You need to take a break, because like it's just going to get worse. It does not get better.
Yeah, and I think, like, with burnout, like, I think for years, because I was fed a narrative of depression and anxiety, I
Hmm.
think I mistook burn because I didn't have the word. I mistook
Yeah.
burnout for depression. So whereas
Hmm.
for 10, 12, 15 years, I went through countless amounts of depression, and the way in which you treat depression has some similarities, but
Hmm.
you often need other support. Like, you can get out of a burnout through kindness and giving yourself grace and putting things in place gradually that are good for you. But
Yeah.
every time I felt burnt out, I was convinced that I was going to go back into a depression, and I had that hanging over me for years. So when I found out about burnout, it was such an aha moment for me. It was like, boom, I now
Yeah.
have the word for this. And
Yeah.
it's underestimated, because so many people will go, oh yeah, I'm a bit tired today, and you're like, I'm not telling you I'm a bit tired. I'm literally telling you
I'm I'm
I
exhausted.
know it's not socially okay for me to get on the floor and sleep, but I happily would. Or
Yeah.
I know it's not okay to sit for 2 days in my pants, but I'm gonna, like
Yeah, it's all I got in
it's not
me.
lazy. It's just I have nothing to give, therefore I'm giving nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. I say it's like I'm feeling so much like inside of my brain that I actually just can't feel any of it at all. It's
Mhm.
everything and it's nothing.
Yeah, I love
Awful
that.
feeling.
Everything and nothing. Yeah, I like that a lot. The final question I ask every guest on here, and you touched on it earlier, and I was like, yes, love that, is, if you could go back, you mentioned earlier going back and giving yourself a hug when you were younger.
Mhm.
If you could go back now and have one conversation or tell yourself something as a child, from the point of view of who you are now, what would it be, and why would you say that?
Um, I would probably tell myself that I'm not sensitive, I'm not bad or mean, um, because those were just sort of the narratives that I was fed or that I just sort of picked up on. Like I remember being like 8 and or like 8, 9, 10, and that's when like I really remember like starting to have shutdowns, like when I would hang out with people for too long. And I remember my cousin asking me one time, like, why do you always get like this? And I'd be like, girl, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I'm just a bitch. Like I really I'm trying my best.
Great.
Um, so, I would just, reassure myself that there's nothing like wrong with me and I'm not mean, I'm not a bad person, I'm not just like an angry, irritable person. I'm just neurodivergent and I need support that I just am not getting.
Yeah, no, I love that. Love that a lot. And I think it is, isn't it? Like what's interesting is not one person mentions telling them that or taking it away. It's like, I'm just going to prepare you for what's ahead.
Yeah.
And so many of us, like I wouldn't change. Someone's asked me if you could switch overnight and get rid of it, would you? And I said no,
No.
like not at
Absolutely not.
all. Because
You want me
I
to adjust to a new way of living?
yeah,
Me?
and I know I'm in a place where I quite like who I am, and
Yeah.
I quite like the authentic me. Whereas for years I hid from it, and I'm like, I'm at a peaceful place with who I am, and I don't want that to change now. Like I'm at one with it, and yeah, no one's taking it away from. Get away, it's mine.
Yeah,
I am
absolutely.
neurodivergent. Get your
Exactly. And
own.
listen, like I know that you neurotypical people have your own problems that you deal with.
Yeah, yeah,
So like I'll just stay over here with mine. It's fine.
yeah, absolutely. Um, B, it's been an absolute pleasure. I
I've had a great time.
I've thoroughly enjoyed just hearing you, learning about your story, looking at that cross pond stuff as well, because I think ultimately, as I said earlier, like no matter where we're situated, where we're from, neurodivergent, neurotypical is neurotypical, and I think
Hmm.
like that there's something powerful in showing that actually we are just people that experience things similarly, and collectively we can just support each other and be there for each other, and kind of spread the good message.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I've had a really great time talking and sharing my experience. I feel great. I feel lighter after
It
talking
is,
about it.
it's cathartic. It
It
is
is.
so
It really
cathartic,
is.
just. And I think sharing your experience can sometimes, because I'm not good at checking in with progress until I
Hmm.
say it aloud or I see
Yeah.
myself talking about it. I don't process how far a person I've come, and just listening to you, you've clearly come so far as a person, and as yourself, just to get to where you are now. And I've loved hearing about it, so thank you so much for sharing it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I really, it's been a blast. Like, I've
Yeah.
had the time of my life.
And I owe it all to you. God, that was, I don't even know what song that was. Dirty Dancing. So for anybody listening, where can people find you? So what are your social tags, your YouTube channels, and things like that?
Yeah, so my YouTube and my TikTok are actually the same, but my YouTube is linked in my TikTok. So my TikTok is at Ohisabee. That's Ohissabee. And you can find me on TikTok. That's where I'm the most active, anyways. I will be more active on YouTube soon. It's just the burnout. It's been kicking my butt.
And I've had an idea and a niggle just literally as we were talking there. I'd love to speak to you. Obviously, we can chat off here. It's not the end of us. It's the start. But I'd
Definitely.
love to do some cross-channel content. So map some content out, film it, and then we could both utilize that and just
Yeah,
show that
definitely.
contrast. Because people do the American way, the English way when it comes to
Yeah.
kind of language, food, and stuff. I think we could do cross-pond neurodivergent stuff. I think it
Yeah.
could be quite
No,
fun
that'd
to
be awesome.
create.
I'd
Yeah,
love that.
love that.
That's what I'm trying to cultivate here, build this community. So hell
Yeah.
yeah, I'm in.
Well, like you'll see a lot of people in here. I'm sure they've followed you, and that there's a huge community. I've been blessed to meet here. So if ever you see any of us on live, me, there's other creators on here who I'm often live with. and you want to jump in the box, you are more than welcome any point. You are very much part of the community, as we are all part of one. Like, just, yeah, become part of the family.
Yeah. Oh, listen, y'all are gonna get sick of me.
No, never. I shan't. Brilliant. But thank you so, so very much, and I'll catch you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Bye, everybody.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.